Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Resident Alien. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we had the fact is that Harry can't sleep. And I love the whole situation. It's a byproduct of... It's so interesting that even though he becomes human, he still maintains certain aspects of himself. He still has a bit of his superhuman strength, which it seems like he kind of picks and chooses when he decides to use it. Because I guess because later on there's a circumstance when he's doing a little tug of war with Undog, and I'm like, why aren't you just using your superhuman strength? But I guess it's like you don't want to kind of tear what you're pulling apart, what you're having to tug of war over. I guess you don't want to accidentally pull it apart or draw too much attention. So maybe there's something like that. But it's also like, or maybe it's a situation where like the longer he's... Well, no, because I'm about to say he's been in this form for like at least 4 months. So it's probably like, it's just, because him and his people can convert to a person on a molecular level. So every aspect of being human, he's pretty much as much human as any other human to a certain extent, or at least on a molecular level. So his body's adapting to that as well. So I think it's just so interesting how that works. But I love the whole toss and turn. He's like, oh, I got to find my weapon. I got to, kill all these humans. Got to find the pieces to my ship. And I got to kill that kid. He's like, I almost forgot about that. And I got to get milk. I need to get milk. Got to remember that, which I love that milk is just kind of his obsession. We also learned, obviously, Harry wasn't his first stop. He actually landed in, after 2 weeks after, I think he was on Earth for 2 weeks, 4 months ago, and he ended up in New Mexico. And he was because the whole conversation is about fear. And he's like, back then, because I had no fear, I was willing to make, strange fashion choices. So he's on a horse as his alien self wearing a hat. So it's like, okay. But obviously he's stressing because he needs to find a body. I love the whole thing of he's like, when I decided to kill Harry, I didn't know his body was going to go into the lake, and obviously I'd have to go looking for it, which it turns out, hey, someone's out on a boat fishing and finds a foot, which sets a whole string of things in motion. For really quickly, Kate, Max's mom, came and visited. It was like, hey, my son thinks you're an alien. He was about to kill her. And it's like, wait, you don't believe me? She's like, of course not. And yeah. So it's like, what do I do? She's trying to fix this whole situation with Max. It's like, well, it's like, well, you can move far away and promise your son that you're never going to set foot in Colorado again. And she's like, we can't do that. He's like, of course you can. And he's trying to laugh it off. Ha 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 ha. But then on top of it, it's like, she's like, well, he asked me not to approach him at school, so I've kind of been avoiding him at school. And it's like, he's like, yeah, and because of that, it's all your fault. So yeah, now that's settled. Spending more time with your kid, get out. And she's like, oh, okay. So that's interesting, because she's like, if I have to spend more time, if Max keeps going like this, not eating or sleeping, I'm going to have to kill him. And Harry is like, you and me both. Ha 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 ha. Just, I love that whole thing. But obviously the foot gets discovered, and now it's sending everyone kind of... Well, for one, I love that it's I love the whole Darcy and Harry thing where she's just kind of he's like, oh, is that by my lake? She's like, no, it's Colorado's lake. Or was that you trying to impress me by being it's your lake? He was like, no, I wasn't trying to do that at all. She was like, could you be a little less needy and more sensitive? Because someone's died here. And she was like, come on, so show us the foot. And it's just and then she's also like, yeah, can we touch the foot? Also, side note, I didn't think about, I should have looked into it. I didn't realize it until I got a closer look. I didn't realize the actor who plays, at least I think it's him, the actor who plays Mike, aka Pit Black. I think that's the actress from I think he was one of the people in the TV show The Closer on TNT. I think that's him. I think the reason why is just because, for one, he's got a little gray in his hair, plus in that show, he had a mustache. So I think that is the same actor. I could be completely wrong, but I think that's him. I was like, I didn't really notice that till this episode. But nevertheless, I thought that was so interesting of him getting closer and closer. I love, Mike being like, it's actually good. We don't just have a killer. We have a serial killer. Asked us how the hell is that better? He's like, because a serial killer is going to stick around. Hell, that serial killer might be in this room, but don't panic. And people start leaving. And it's like, okay, Doc, do you have anything to add? And he was like, I am so scared. And kind of his voice cracks because now he is becoming more human. He is adopting fear, because obviously the fear of exposure, because he's like, I know this, it was a foot from the lake. it's got to be Harry's foot. Even later on, taking the foot and doing a side-by-side comparison of being like, yep, this is definitely Harry's foot. That means that body is somewhere out there needing to be found. So that's sending him in panic mode. I even love, like, he's trying to, well, for one, they're trying to send the foot off so they can get DNA analysis, and Harry's trying to find a way around it. And obviously his new thing that he found out about were circumcisions, which I love him being like, when he was studying it, he was like, he's like, what's that, an eye surgery? And then he find out about it, and he shuts the computer. He's like, they are savages. Finding out, that humans do the whole circumcision thing. I cannot say that word. I'm so sorry. But then he finds out about it, and it's like, oh, he's like, and I love that he's just like, oh, your baby's okay. Is your baby circumcised? It's like, what? And that's just like, that's not an actual, it's like, I'm so sorry. He's like, you're right. I'm a doctor. I should just be able to check for myself. And it's like, it's like, oh yeah, like, it can prevent infections, STDs. It's like, yeah. Do you want your kid to get gonorrhea? So it's like, oh, it's a pretty simple procedure. I just cut the skin off your baby's prick, and it's like, wow. Which he uses that foreskin to replace the foot sample he's supposed to be giving Big Black. And I also love that whole conversation where it's like, yeah, we'll find out who the killer discovered the killer. He, and Harry being like, she. And like BB being like all about like, oh, what's up with this political correctness saying when you say he now it has to now mean he or she. Like, he's like, why you have to break? And it's like, I love that he's like this representative of like kind of like, anti-PC culture. Like, once again, calling the mayor a snowflake in the first episode. So it's like, you kind of see what time BB is on. I'm just calling him BB for short. I should just go ahead and just call him Mike instead of going. It's just. I mean, I think you just have to emphasize it every time, just being like, oh yeah, Big Black. Just it's just like, once again, who nickname yourself that. It's because someone nicknaming you, sure, that could be a nickname someone else gave you, but for you to kind of actively tell people, call me Big Black. It's like, once again, like the mayor said in the first episode, I'm not going to do that. So there's that. So things kind of work out for Harry in that front. I also love when he was watching Jay sleep. He was like, I need some of that. And Asa was like, excuse me? And he was like, sleep. I haven't been, I just can't turn off my brain. She's like, do you meditate? He's like, oh, you mean that thing of sitting there when you think of all the people you want to kill? He's like, yeah. She's like, well, that's good. Obviously he did say that last part of it, but I love I love like just getting that look into the inner monologue in his head and everything. But obviously they're trying to dredge the entire water for the dead body. I love that whole bit where it's like the mayor is throwing up and Mike is like, no, you just want to go back because you're throwing up. It's like, sack up. The fact is we're not going anywhere until we find that body. It's just like, which obviously is stressing Harry out. And he's even being like, oh, even this dog next to me is making me nervous. Which turns out he should be nervous considering the dog is over there barking on top of Harry's body, which got washed up on shore. It's so interesting because Liv literally said like, oh, we need to check by the shore because the body could have gotten washed up. But Mike didn't want to listen to her because it's Liv. He's the one that's in control. He's such a control freak and he just wants to be top dog. That he doesn't listen to her, which, once again, the dynamic that is her being super meekish and him being super assertive and just aggressive. I also thought it was so sad where she's like, oh yeah, she's like basically like, well, most people are in the database, so we'll be able to potentially find out who this is, because she was like, yeah, because the ancestry stuff backlashed on her because she ended up doing one, found out that her dad is actually her dad's best friend, Bill. Well, then she confronted her parents about it, and then they got divorced, so she's not a biggest fan of that ancestry stuff. I literally was watching something recently where a story of kind of a similar nature came up, and I was like, oh, that's going to screw up a lot of probably break up a lot of families. And it's just so sad that she was just kind of like, once again, Liv can just go into like a depressing thing like that, but she tries to be a little more upbeat afterwards and stuff. It's like, oh, poor Liv. Your family circumstances probably why you kind of have like the very meekish demeanor that you have, because you're probably blaming yourself like, oh, I'm literally the reason why my family fell apart, so I should have probably like, oh, I should have kept quiet about that. But it's just like the roller coaster that is Liv is just so fascinating. I love the whole Asta situation, like her and Darcy kicking it and hanging out and everything. Them like, Darcy's way of having a good time is like, oh, let's go watch as they like search the waters for the dead body. But obviously they're drinking, and it's like, for them it's a sad situation of, there's kind of no escaping this town. So Darcy's like, honestly, the dead body, I'm actually kind of envious of them because they were able to get away from this. But, Asta's like, no, we were able to. It's like, yeah, we followed our dreams and everything. But then it's like, yeah, but some way or another, we found ourselves right back. This town, the reality ended up dragging us right back to this town. And it's kind of like, yeah, that is kind of sad. You got away, but you just the town has a way of just kind of pulling you back. So it's like, there is no escape. And I also love them, like, busting it, like, doing their thing to ODBs. Like, what's the name of that actual song? I always think of it just because of the chorus. Like, I think it's I Got Your Money, right? I think that's the actual, cause I was just, it's like, man, it just take hearing that song. I was like, oh shit. Cause they were just singing it. I didn't know it would actually bust into the actual song. They only play the chorus, but still it's like, man, R.I.P. ODB, man. But nevertheless, I really enjoyed that. Then him showing up at Harry's place while he's trying to hide the body. And I even love the whole thing from Darcy. Like, she's really got a thing for Harry. Like, her being like, yeah, I can't believe I was ever into him. Not unless she was talking about someone. I think she was talking about Harry. But then it's like, wait, here you can find out so much about someone once you go through like their pills and stuff like that. And it's like, wait, they're in alphabetical order, which makes you wonder, is that actually Harry who did that, or like the real Harry that did that? But she's like, he's a maniac. God, I'm so turned on. And then later on being like, yeah, I'm going to my ex JT's. Like, it's like, oh my God, like, and she's like bending over and literally lifting her shirt like most of the way. I'm like, yo. But Harry's not getting the signs, and she's like, yeah, he's most likely going to follow us. I mean, I'm sure he's jealous, but he's hiding it. And she's like, yep, Asta's like, yeah, he's hiding it super well. It's like, I bet you he's going to follow us. And then Asta's like, I'm sure he's not. And I even love the whole thing of like, they got their friend and they went to the party because her ex JT was throwing a party. They're like, yeah. And then partway there, they realize like, wait, this is a high school party because JT is JT's son. And I love that at one point she's Darcy kind of grinding on a dude, and it's just like, and the dude smiles and has braces, and she's like, oh my God. She covers his mouth and then she looks around, and then like they're dragging her away, and she's like, I think that was his first ever boner. And it's just kind of like, oh my God. Like, just the effed up thing of like them, because even someone was like, oh man, check out those MILFs. And it's like, because they all realize. And that one in particular, she was like, I literally drove like 30 miles out of the way to get here, got a babysitter just to end up at a high school party. She's like, I got a family. You two need to get a family, maybe even a lawyer. Twisted circumstances. But they found Jay there. I had a feeling like she didn't correlate it because I guess she's not thinking too much about it. But I'm assuming Jay's the one responsible for the missing pills. Maybe she's not. I just assumed she was, just because of like how like out of it she was at the at work, but also like when she was at the party, it seemed like she was kind of passed out. Like, part of me is like, is she, maybe there's some issues at home and she's popping pills, but also home dude had like the bottle, so like either she's like doing some while also selling them. I don't know. Or maybe someone else has them. Maybe this correlates to why he was killed. But I feel like Jay is somehow connected. I feel like she was the one who stole the pills, but like Asta didn't really push her on it. Just like, hey, let's get you home. And as Asta's dropping her off, she thinks back to like, because it seems like Sam knows. Now in retrospect, it kind of might even put Jay at the top of the list, because maybe Jay knows that Sam is responsible for, like, wait, you know who my real mom is, and maybe she confronted Jay about it, but he didn't give her the information she wanted, so she poisoned him. So, because like I brought up, like, the trailer made me, I mean, and maybe I misread, I thought it was a serial killer on the loose. They're jumping to that conclusion just because Sam's dead and now there's another potential dead body, so they're jumping to the whole serial killer angle to it, but maybe Sam's death is the actual only death that happens in town. I mean, I also love that Harry blames himself because he's like, hey, I should have spent more time looking for like my device and my ship and maybe even the body instead of watching the Law and Order marathons. But as Asta's watching Jay walk away, she flashes, but like the point I was making is she flashed back to Sam, you know, dropping the baby off. So it's like, okay. And it's what I pretty much figured, just the way Asta was acting towards Jay, I was like, that's actually your daughter, isn't it? I was wondering if Darcy knew, but it doesn't seem like Darcy knows. So it probably doesn't. It seems like even her dad doesn't know that Jay's in her life, because she was having breakfast with her dad and she kind of broke down. I was like, I had a girl, you know, and now because I think because of seeing that, it made her think like, you know, it's hard to say whether it's just because of seeing Jay in that situation or whether it's purely like, because it looked like it was the same house. It didn't, from the flashback. It didn't look like, oh, I could have been wrong. I could be wrong, but I'm fairly certain I was like, yeah, that's the exact house. So it's implying that Jay is her daughter, but not unless I misinterpret that and it's just the whole Jay situation reminded her. But I'm fairly certain, I'm like 90% sure, and because of this, I'm a little less sure now. But I'm fairly certain that that's what it was saying, that it was the exact same house just years later. I think, like I said, I could be wrong, but so that makes, like I said, that makes me put Jay at the top of the potential suspect list because of that. But regardless, but she's thinking like, maybe like seeing Jay in that condition made her go like, maybe my daughter's better off with me than her. But her dad's like, maybe, you know, that mother connection will never go away. If it's kind of meant to be like, basically that connection will bring you and your daughter together, which ironically it has, but he doesn't know that. And she hasn't said anything about it. Which I'm sure there's also a little irony behind that statement too, because it's like, well, it makes you wonder, I'm about to say Asta, just because Ellen kept saying Asta. It's like, no, you know it's Asta, but I keep messing up on it. But I'm curious, is Asta's mom going to ever pop back up in the pictures? Because she probably hasn't seen her. I think she hasn't seen her mom since her, you know, Dan took her in, you know. I don't even know the conversation about her dad. She probably referenced it before that her dad. I think she brought it up maybe in the first episode about her dad, but obviously she talked about her mom leaving her and that Dan's not her actual dad. I don't know. Like I said, even last episode, I don't remember her actually talking about her actual dad. Maybe she did, and I'm blanking on it, but regardless. Another side of this episode I thought was kind of interesting is the whole Max situation where he's at school and that little girl ends up kind of getting bullied a little bit because it was like, he's scared, like the moment he had that reaction where someone's like, nice hat, and you think he's about to get bullied for it, but then the girl gets, because she has her hijab on, but Max comes over and picks up her books and helps her. Like, obviously, he gets ridiculed, too, because, like, I think even before the alien thing, he probably already had the issue, because that's why he's like, Mom, I already get made fun of enough. I mean, that might have been already the contributing factor, and now this alien thing just made it worse. So he gets picked on and stuff. And obviously, he's telling his mom, like, leave me alone. I will literally pay you. She's like, that's the money I give you. He's like, money is money. But then, like, his new friend, is beside him and being like, hey, I believe you. Max is the only one that can actually see Harry for who he is, as we see at the end of the episode, but I think she's going along with it just because it's like, hey, you're my friend, so you're kind of an outcast, I'm an outcast, so I'll go along with how you feel just so I can actually be your friend, because I don't want to be alone, and you need a friend, and I need a friend, so I think she's just going along with it. So, but I think for Max, it means a lot having an ally, because no one believes him, people ridicule, because it's not just... Oh, I mean, and I think that's neat how that puts him in a situation where it's like, obviously, it's not just all kids are going to be able to see Harry for what he is. Only people with that genetic thing. And even Harry said, like, 1 out of 1,000 people had it. So it's not like it's just, only kids because they have the wonderment of innocence. Because obviously, there's something else that did something like that where it's like only kids can see or do a certain thing. And like, moment you become an adult. Oh, I know what the most recent thing would be. It's different circumstances, but different situation entirely. But his Dark Materials, because of the whole dust thing. Also, the whole thing with the specters, a very similar thing once you kind of reach adulthood. So it's not something of that vein. It's just like Max is literally the only person in town that can see Harry for what he really is, beneath, like, you know, the thing that he's disguising himself as. I skipped over it too. I should have talked. I think I meant to bring it up earlier. Was the whole bit between Max and Harry. Harry's just like out and about, just talking mad shit. He's like, he called him something. He's like, you can't call me that. He's like, oh, I'm sorry, shit for brains. I'm like, yo, and then being like, ass asshole calling, and it's just like, oh, why don't you, no one's gonna believe you, go to the top of a tower. He's like, there are no towers. He's like, I knew that. No, you didn't, you idiot. You think this is olden times and there's towers. You're so stupid. Like, oh, I better watch out for the imaginary towers follow me. It's like, that kid is such a dick. And Harry's just like, and that's what makes him so non-threatening, even though we know he can kill anything and anyone, just in that moment for him to be like, just whatever, asshole kid. I told him, you know. Also, there's that thing at the beginning that was with Darcy and that dude. Like, I guess maybe that's their job or something, like them blowing dynamite to, I guess, keep... I don't know what that's all about. They never really explained it. It's just kind of a thing. I mean, the main purpose of it screwed over Harry as he was digging for a piece of his ship. He found another piece, but now it's like, okay, so if this piece is here, that must mean the device or whatever is in this relative area to some extent. But nevertheless, Harry's got the body in a freezer, he's got it locked up now that he's got a whole bunch of locks. It's nice to see even after all these months, he still has a cowboy hat. Obviously, the whole conversation about people in town, everyone's got their secrets. Some have, you know, kind of a little more out and about with their secrets. Regardless, then we had that thing at the end where the guy he ran into in New Mexico turns out like, hey, here are the those people being like, because I think the time frame was different. I think it was because the guy, I'm blanking on it because the body was found fairly recently, wasn't it? I'm losing the time frame because I forgot, because it was at the because I think that was like 3 or so months ago when that dude fell, but obviously his body's like nothing but a skeleton now. But obviously they found the body at the end of the last episode, but I don't remember if that was present day or not, because I can't even remember. I'm terrible with my memory's terrible. I don't even remember if they specified, like, when we went back to New Mexico at the end of this episode, was that because didn't they say that was sometime, that wasn't, or was that just saying somewhere in I think it said somewhere in New Mexico. I think, not unless it was saying like there's a time frame. Regardless, because I'm trying to remember, piece it together. Like, did they find that device last episode and now they're trying to find the guy who saw the alien, or they go to the guy who's trying to find the alien, who's talked about the alien first, and then that led them to Colorado eventually down the road? I don't know. Like I said, I'm mixing that all up in my head. Either way, I thought it was interesting. They're asking about the alien. He's like, you have to find out about it in my book. It's like, oh, you're writing a book. And one of them proceeds to snap the dude, attack him, and snap his neck. And it's like, the other dude's like, no, we were given orders not to kill. She's like, you were given completely different orders than I was. So then my mind is like, okay, so are they also aliens here to report? Because like, maybe like, oh, we haven't heard from whatever Harry's real name is. We haven't heard from him in 4 months, so we here to investigate. Or are they government officials that, like, the government's like, we're shutting this down, don't let anyone know? Like, I guess it'd be too much to be in their alien form while they're potentially doing it. So I'm curious which lane they are in. Are they sent by the government to cover it? I'm assuming they're aliens trying to track down Harry to make sure everything goes, because he was supposed to, like, basically kill all of humanity 4 months ago, but it's like the planet's still standing, all life is still there. We got to find out whatever happened to Harry. So I guess that's kind of what that is. I mean, they probably don't know what he looks like now too, so they're trying to track him down however they can. So I'm assuming the moment they meet each other, did they be able to recognize, like, oh, Harry, it's you. Oh, you're in this form. So that's interesting, realizing potentially there are other aliens on the planet to kind of investigate things. But also the whole thing of, like, we were given completely different orders. So like I said, if they're aliens, they could just be government officials, but I feel like they're too, like, at least one of the dudes seems a little dorky to be a government official. She seems like the one, it seems like they're aliens, I'm assuming, but I'm leaning more towards aliens, but there is still the possibility of them just being government officials, like trying to keep an eye on them. Because, like, the whole, like, they found a device and everything, they were taking a picture, so that's why I'm like, I don't know. I feel like, but it could be just the government being like hush-hush about it, just because it's like, we don't want to panic the world about everything. I don't know. We'll ultimately have to wait and see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.